Welcome back to another edition, another episode of The Source, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, man. Just a couple of questions to top things off. Let's just get it out of the way now. Do you miss the old computer? Do you miss the BCS? Because y'all wanted the 4-team playoff, but it's just not enough now, is it? It's just not enough. Now, I kind of feel bad for Baylor and TCU. Kind of. I kind of feel bad for them. But everybody wanted a 4-team playoff. This is what we got. Florida State has to be in it because they're undefeated. Now, I realize in the past month that the strength of their wins, the style points, if you will, hasn't been in their favor. But they've been wins. And seeing that they didn't lose any game before that this year, you're undefeated. You won the national championship last year, and I understand that you should not translate last year into this year. But Florida State, you were ranked high. You went undefeated. You should be part of that Final Four group. Oregon, granted, your one loss has come more recent than other teams' one loss. But since then, you've run the table, and that's fine. You routed ever since that loss. Everybody's routed since their one loss. Ohio State, your loss came in week 2 against Virginia Tech. Now, granted, Virginia Tech really fell apart, and you were at home, but that was, well, not week 2. It was your second game. I forgot the exact date and part of the schedule, but that was your second game of the season that you lost. It's a long time ago. That's, what, 3 months ago? Now, a lot of these teams, Alabama included, your loss was basically October 1st, which today being December 7th, it's over 2 months ago. No big deal, I suppose. Not a huge deal, because, well, that was 2 months ago. And because we live in this ADHD society of what you just did really matters. I kind of get that. I was dogging Florida State initially, because, well, the past month hasn't looked good, but they're undefeated, so they have to be in. Ohio State, your loss came, 3 months ago. Okay. Oregon, your loss, I believe, came about 2 months ago. Alabama, your loss, I think that was on the road at Ole Miss, and you only lost by a touchdown. That was 2 months ago, roughly first weekend of October. TCU, I believe, lost at Baylor right around that same time, early October, if not the first and the second weekend. And Baylor's loss, I forget. But either way, TCU and Baylor are out of it. I almost want to shed a tear, but what more do you want? The computer sucked, and we needed to get rid of the computer. So we introduced the BCS, which was a combination of the computer, the coaches poll, which can be biased, and the AP poll, I believe, Associated Press, which can also be biased, depending on where the writer is from. Same with the coach, depending on where the coach is from, right? Those can be biased, and the computer, well, it's not an exact science. So you combine those three and get the BCS. The BCS wasn't good enough. We need get the and one, the plus one. Bring in 4 teams. Here we go. 4 teams. We're all set for it, and it's gone. We don't like it. We already don't like what we were asking for. Well, granted, this is mainly within the state of Texas that doesn't like this new playoff format. 4 is not enough. Damn it, it needs to be 8. Why not just have Dick Vitale come in and tell us, who's in, baby? Who's gonna make it? Yeah, everybody's in. Everybody makes it, baby. No. Damn it, I mentioned that I wasn't going to bring up college basketball, and I kind of did just there. Kentucky, by the way, just keep winning. Chalk. Roll with them. And I did it again. Damn it. But 4 teams apparently was not enough. But now you want to bring in 8 teams. And although I didn't do extensive homework on that, but TCU and Baylor would have cried their eyes out just to get in. All right, so we're up to 6 teams. Isn't that just too much? That's just too much. 4 should be sufficient. And sorry, but TCU, now when I looked at it, TCU struggled. And I know it was on the road, I believe in both games. But you beat West Virginia by 1 point, And then I think a week or two after that, you went to Kansas and only beat them by like 4. So granted, I can dog Florida State and say your last 4 games have been really close and suspect, and some of those games you should have walked away with and not struggled, but you remain undefeated, so you gots to stay in. If Florida State had 1 loss throughout the year, I can almost guarantee, even if that loss was early against, who was that, Clemson, when Jameis Winston was out, I can almost guarantee that 1 loss would have kept Florida State out of this 4-team playoff. Almost guaranteed, just because of the Jameis Winston thing and they're not winning pretty in these late games. I get that. But that excuse that they want to use, if Florida State had lost, well, guess what? They didn't. TCU, your loss, and your not so impressive wins down the stretch hurt you. Baylor, same kind of thing. Letting by a lot of points in some games, and I think, well, let me double check right now. Excuse me as I open up a brand new window. If everything loads up well, and it does, here we go. It's almost going to look like I'm talking directly to you. Laptop style. Baylor and TCU both crying. Ohio State, by all means, deserves to get in. Like I said, their loss was their 2nd game of the season. So that being the case, they're okay to get in. Did you see how bad they trounced Wisconsin with their 3rd-string quarterback? I would like to see any of the other remaining teams around them, whether it is Florida State or Alabama or Baylor, TCU. I'd like to see those teams win with their 3rd-string quarterback. Not just win, but win the way Ohio State did. And looking at Baylor, where is the mark on their schedule? Because it's 1 loss, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of 1-loss teams right now that can make the argument. But, yeah, sure, you beat TCU, so you kind of had the tiebreaker there. But your loss, granted it was on the road at West Virginia, but you lose 41-27. That's a big loss in mid-October. I know it's on the road, but that's still a big loss. That's a game you should have had going good in your favor. So, that loss, a quality loss, well, not a quality, bad quality loss. Just a bad loss, I suppose. Granted, I will always say, and it's true, it's tough to win on the road in college football. But you shouldn't lose like that. Alabama's 1 loss by a touchdown. So, if they're going to be ranked number 1, I got no problem with that. Because their 1 loss was on the road by a touchdown, not by several. What can I say other than, well, I was right again. It's never going to be enough. It will never be enough. And there's too many dummies out there. Hey, yeah, everything's bigger in Texas except everything from the neck up, right? The IQ, not so high on the list. Not going to happen. Sure, the amount of beer that you drink, you know, the number of digits that show up when you stand on a weight scale. Oh yeah, everything's bigger in Texas. The waistband, the arm flab, you know, the amount of teeth that are missing and ripped away from the gum line. Oh yeah, everything's bigger in Texas. But once again, it's just not good enough, and it'll never be good enough. Let's refresh it real quick. The computer, it's not good. Computers, there's errors in these things. They're never exact. It doesn't know the whole story. So then you bring in the addition of what could be potentially biased coaches, what could be potentially biased reporters of the Associated Press, and who they more or less favor. Combine all those 3 things, you get the BCS. So you went from a single computer to a triple category ranked individual stat line, the BCS. Those aren't good enough. The super conferences, oh, they're on their way. The super conferences are a-coming. Because the 14 playoff, already in its first year of inception, not good enough. Really? How better could this have been? So if TCU wants to get in, you just beat a 2-win team the other day, Iowa State. And that's not your fault, that's your schedule. But on your schedule, you got one of them. And it came at a poor time, and you put together some questionable weak wins along the way. Baylor, same thing with you. You got that loss. Hey, you can't spell Baylor without an L, right? And you got one of those in your column as well. Now, sure, Alabama's got a loss. Ohio State has got a loss. I understand that's not fair. Oregon's got a loss. But it's kind of quality of the loss when it happened, because apparently that does make a difference. Let me put it to you this way. Ohio State, as I said, their second game they played was a loss. It's 3 months ago. Since then, they've been on a tear. But a team that would have lost, let's just say, a team that lost, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that looks bad coming down the stretch. So sure, there's a bit of a combination of your record and when your loss was. I mean, you could, and hypotheticals, you love them and so do I. If a team were to go, let's say they lose their first game of the year, and I don't care who it's against. I don't care if it's a 1AA school, if it's against a Sun Belt team, Conference USA, or it's an in-conference game. If they lose that game, but then rout everybody all the way through, well, they should be in contention, right? Unless there's 3 or 4 other undefeated teams, which, in this current format, tough for that to happen. I wouldn't see it possible. But that one-loss team, their one loss came early. They corrected their mistakes along the way. Isn't that how society works in general? You know, maybe the mistakes you made. Look at it this way. Let's look directly at you, Baylor, Texas, and the state of Texas in general. Let's just say that a bunch of college kids, you made a bunch of mistakes. Maybe in that first semester of school. Skipped some classes, a little bit of a hangover, you don't show up, bad grades. And sure, that will affect your cumulative GPA, but if you bust your ass all the way through, that ending GPA, hey, you probably got that thing back on track. However, if you start off 4.0s all the way, and then that final semester you start slacking off, and here comes a 2.7. All of a sudden, that maintained 4.0 that you had is going to be decimated by that 2.7, and it's going to show. Now, we say it in all kinds of sports across all walks. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. Florida State finished great. Alabama finished really good. Ohio State finished great. Oregon finished pretty good. TCU, Baylor, how did you finish? There's enough sketchy there, enough head scratchers and chin scratchers. Not to make an argument that maybe you got fleas. Bunch of scrubby little grubs look at you from Texas. You're going to cry about it until you can't get things your way. Come on. Now sure, Baylor, one loss. You can make all your arguments. Hell, you can make your argument you beat TCU. But, okay, you beat TCU. What did they do? Just yesterday, they beat a 2-win team. That doesn't look good for you either. If you don't have a conference championship, you are hampered. That's something maybe you should look into. Put together a conference championship. 10 teams, right? Is that what you're looking at? 5-5. What's wrong with that? Try it. It just might work, and you might get a little bit more of a nod. Because, hell, if you had to play each other head up, well, the winner of that probably has a better say-so than, well, maybe better than Oregon, maybe better than Florida State, Ohio State, or Alabama. I'm not sure which, though. But in the current format, the one everybody wanted, you're already saying it's flawed. Just goes to show you. Who was it? Abe Lincoln said, you can, some of the people all the time, all the people some of the time, but you can never please all the people all the time. The reality is, you can probably please some of the people some of the time. That seems to be your better guarantee. And even in the new format, dummies galore, mostly in the state of Texas right now, totally looking at you. Dummies galore. And it'll never be enough to make everybody happy. Well, if you don't like the format, you need to do something about it. Because TCU, you were one of those teams. Well, we're in the Mountain West. What can we do? We can't help that our conference is weak. We need to be in the national championship. Hey, all right, fine. You tried stepping up a little bit. You're playing a little stiffer competition, but that loss hurt you. And your sketchy wins, even though they were on the road, you should be able to beat West Virginia and Kansas despite the fact that it's on the road. Baylor, your loss at West Virginia. What's wrong with you guys? West Virginia has your number? Both of you? Ooh, nearly figured both of you out. So why not make the argument that West Virginia should be in the conversation? Because they bested one of you by a hefty amount and only lost to the other team by 1. Where's their argument? Well, they had more losses than we did. More arguments can be made. It'll never be enough. Well, sadly, I gotta close this one out. I know, about 16 minutes worth. It's never enough. But sadly, I am needed elsewhere. I have other things that I need to attend to as well. Trying to keep you entertained and informed. The bullet points of brilliance. The unscripted genius. Although I did need to bring up a little bit of a web browser and get some references going. But that's okay. You would have brought up your smartphone to look it up anyway. Unless you're from Baylor, Texas. I'm sure everybody else had to look at that one carefully to decide what 4 teams they would have wanted. Because initially, for a quick second, even I thought, I don't know if Florida State gets in. Oh wait, they're undefeated. Yeah, they're going to get in. Who gets left out? Oh well, TCU, Baylor, I do wish you the best. I do. But just complaining too much. Look on the bright side, Baylor. RG3's gone and he's still struggling. You're almost better off without him, strangely enough. In TCU, nobody likes a whiner. They don't. What? Texas Christian University? Complaining is not the Christian way. WWJD. It's not very noble. It's not. You should be thankful, right? Be thankful. You had a hell of a year. That's probably not the right thing to say when I'm talking about a Christian university. I apologize for that one. Had a heck of a year. And hey, the dice didn't roll your way, so you gotta load them in your favor. You wanted this 14 playoff, and, well, you'll get to watch every bit of it now. Be careful what you wish for. In some way or another, you might get it. You might.